You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Battista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Mick Heyman. How to get rid of money stress for good. Ladies, welcome. I'm super excited for you to be here. As you may or may not know, as we have expanded the coaching that we're doing so far beyond dating coaching into high performance and life coaching, I was super excited when this guy, Mick Heyman, came across my inbox. I love this topic, and I'm super excited for you to listen to this interview. He is the CFA and founder of Heyman Investment Counseling. He's been doing money stuff for 40 years, building a career in wealth management, and he helps individuals and institutions of lots of sizes build and preserve wealth with his, get this, stress-free method for mellowing your money. He had me at the word mellow. He first began his career at a small firm in Cincinnati, and then he moved to Louisville, and he worked on equities with a team of top equity managers. He managed billions in assets for clients, and then he moved to San Diego, coming full circle, working with individual investors, and he's been working with some of those clients for more than 30 years. And you can find his articles showing how to mellow your money on LinkedIn. He's been in the Wall Street Journal, as well as other financial publications. And he is going to talk to us today about sound money management as the path to health, wealth, and wisdom. And by the way, he plays tennis, he plays golf, and he surfs. So that is very cool. So I'm super happy that you're here.
Well, thank you so much, Marni, and thanks for that wonderful introduction. That it sounds really good when you say it. But
it is really good. So listen, I was joking that I said, oh, you had me at mellow, but I was just talking to a client. We're working on some like abundance thinking and mindset and designing, a life on her own terms. And she was just talking to me about her beliefs about money, which is so common, about, spending lavishly on this and feeling guilty about that and worrying about income and worrying about investments and is there enough? And we were talking about, some people see first class travel as convenience. Some would see it as luxury. Like, we all have these different set of beliefs and values that we bring to money. So how did you sort of land on like mellow money management?
Well, it didn't start out that way. I, like every young person, wanted to be aggressive and try my hardest at trading and doing all kinds of things, and doing, I guess, is kind of a key word there. And I'm sure whether it's relationships or money, people want to act, and that's how I started off my career. But my first client, what I saw happen was, she was an elderly lady. She had been with the firm for a long time. They had stocks for 30 or 40 years with huge gains. And so you couldn't do anything. And really all she wanted to do with her money was give it away.
Okay.
She had a budget. She could, she lived in her retirement home. She was able to pay for her room and for the room for her ex-chef and maid.
Yeah.
A delightful lady and a character like crazy. But the thing was, we couldn't really do anything with her account. So, all the other accounts we would trade and do all these kind of things. Well, guess at the end of the years, every year you'd look at performance. Who was doing the best? Eloise was doing the best. Doing nothing, sitting, was outperforming all the doing. And that was my first client, and it didn't totally sell me on it. But that lesson is really the first chapter of my book, because when I look back, that was such a key lesson. Let it happen. Be more mellow. We try so hard in so many aspects of our lives, and every day people are on, telling you about the end of the world and all these different things are going on and getting us anxious about all kinds of things, especially our money. And there's no reason to do that. We can just sit like Eloise. I mean, you can't do nothing. You have to make a plan, stick with your plan, and then let it go. And so that's what I was thinking. I wanted to do this. And I also was thinking, how did I learn? It was through stories like Eloise. It was through stories. There's so many how-to books on everything.
Right.
The 5 steps and the 8 things and whatever it is. And I thought the way I learn is through experience.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of the how did the mellow come, and then also how did I start thinking about how to express myself with that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing because, well, I did a post on Facebook about this the other day about they, because they are telling us like so many scary stories, right? About doom and gloom and recessions and interest rates and all these fears. And I wonder, like, how do you advise someone, especially maybe if she's single or she's financially dependent on, no one, right? Like she just got herself. When someone says like, "Oh my God, what should I do?" What do you say? Like, how can she calm herself, or what's the long view, or how do you sort of manage through that uncomfortableness of just like having a long-term vision?
So there are a couple of things there. And the first thing regarding the long view thing is, and it's something it was kind of early in my career when we wanted to make charts of rates and different things. And of course there was no internet. So they said, "Mick, go to the library, go back to the 1920s at Barron's and whatever it was, and get this data." Well, I became fascinated with the headlines, starting the 29 crash in the 30s and the World War II and Pearl Harbor and the Kennedy assassination, all these different things. And you didn't need big things. Back then, it was the same thing. Every week, the world was coming to an end.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next week would happen. And you go, there's something there. There's a great education for me back then of the world is always going to seem like it's coming to an end. And so that's part of what I'd like to get across to people is this is not, we always think this is special or this is a special time. Oh my God, this is, pandemic.
The worst.
The worst. And the, headlines helped with that. But, we've never had this, we've never had that. And yet back in the 20s or the 1820s, they had things that never had happened before either. These emotions are nonstop. They've gone on for thousands of years. And so I think if people can get comfortable with the fact that they're not alone, that this has kept happening, and if we can kind of get comfortable with the fact that, I don't know, I was reading this book and the guy was saying even in the caveman days, there was some snotty teenager yelling at his parents about something.
Right.
And so this long-term thing both is looking backwards, but also looking forward. The world isn't going to come to an end. And if it does, then we don't have anything to worry about anyway,
Right. That's so true. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day because I was doing a meditation actually. And there was something, it was like a guided meditation. It was talking about our ancestors and go back like, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. And I started to think about my great-grandfather, Max, who came to America in 1894. And I was starting to kind of like look at a story about him that I had seen in my family history. And it was like he just survived the Panic of 1819, the Depression, Korean War, World War II, like literally, right? Like in his one little lifetime, right? Like all these things. And I thought like if he were to share the wisdom that he learned from surviving through and thriving through all those things, what would great grandfather Max say? And I feel like it's sort of like what you just shared, which is like, chill.
No, I mean, and it would be fascinating to hear the loves and the broken-hearted times he had. You reminded me, when my grandparents passed away, I inherited their pictures. And they had this sweet story of how they met on a streetcar and they could barely hold hands. And then finally, they finally went out for some kind of soda or something. And it was such a sweet story. So I looked at the pictures that I inherited, and they're all climbing all over each other on the beach and everything. And they're just like us.
Right. I know. Isn't that crazy? It was so long ago. So we have to remember that I call it terminal uniqueness. And so our time in history doesn't even have this like terminal, like what's the worst for us. And so if we can look back and understand that as a society, as a culture, you're talking about like, caveman times, right? Like there's always been these ups and these downs. And so we want to be able to be able to calm ourselves and have this mellow attitude about money.
And I think everybody probably needs to look at themselves. I was looking at some of your podcasts from other people, and it's so important to examine your own emotions and what risk can you take. And I know whether it's ladies or men, that everybody is unique. And just because you fit in a box doesn't mean that you should be in that box. We all have a level of investment in stocks, let's say, that would scare us into selling. And there's a great quote that was saying, nobody should have more stocks than their sleeping level. In other words, the surprises are going to happen. We can't predict them. And when they do, you have to have strong hands. For some people, that's half your money in stocks. For some people, it's more or less. And so whether somebody is struggling or whether somebody is very comfortable with their money, they need to figure out what is it that would scare them into doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And we're all capable of that.
So I have another question for you. I was so excited for this interview, by the way, because I listened to so many things. And I was listening to, so there's a lot of, there are a lot of podcasts about financial independence and FIRE, financial independence, FIRE early and slow finance, slow FIRE and all of these things. Then I hear Susie Orman saying like, you don't know when you're 30, what's going to happen when you're 70. You're like crazy if you like retire early. And all of that made me think about this. We have this focus on the end, on retiring. And as like the end game, like I'm going to, do what I got to do and then I'll live my life. And I was wondering, since you're all about the secret to becoming healthy, wealthy, and wise, what do you say to clients who are just like, that's all they're thinking about is the date and the number and not really enjoying their life on the journey?
Yeah, it's that's so important. And it's funny, one of my earlier clients, at some point, she had plenty of money. She was in almost her retired years, and she was the market could drop in half and she would have been fine. And so he was going to visit somebody or one of her grandkids or something. And I said, you got to fly first class, Margie. I mean, she's a cane. She's, it really was a struggle for her. So I finally talked her into it. And then every time she went to visit the grandchild, she's thanking me and she's saying, Mick, that was the greatest advice you ever gave me. And I'm thinking, no, none of the stocks, none of the, nothing. The best advice was first class. Okay. But the point is balance and everything. I was thinking, even talking to you and thinking of all your guests, and some people are so, they don't want to focus at all on money. You think, oh, I'm a spiritual person. I don't.
Yes, let's talk about that.
And so that's imbalance. And the same thing, if you're only focused on money and not your spiritual side or your health side, that also. And so part of what I would put across is balance in everything. And I that's the mellow part. And my kids would joke, yeah, Dad, we have a few examples of you not being very mellow, but so it's do what I say, not what I do. But
right, believe me, exactly. My dad, as he got older, he would say, well, now I'm a mellow fellow. And I'm like, wow, took a long time.
Exactly. A lot of misadventures to get you there.
To be a mellow fellow. Let's talk about FOMO, because that's the other thing is, there's, should I do Bitcoin? Should I do structured notes? Should I do commercial real estate? Should I do And I know for me personally, I totally fall into FOMO. I had a friend who used to be a coach, and she was like, yeah, I now own like 20 single family units. And and I was like, oh my God, I'm missing out. Like, what? Maybe that's what I should do. It's really, really hard. So how do you figure out what's right for you? How do you deal with FOMO?
It is such a hard thing, and it's alluring to everybody. And we've all, if you haven't fallen into that trap, then you almost need to a little bit to teach yourself the lesson. And it is the trickiest thing because what, whether it's Susie Orman or the lessons are right there. It's not that complicated what you need to do to get what you need in the end. But that fear of missing out is just so alluring. And it's such a strong, powerful trend. And I just try to encourage people to go back to this long-term path and try to find examples like whether it's crypto or Beanie Babies or whatever it is back in the day. There's always the next thing. The GameStop was going crazy and you think, oh, that's going to be over. Well, what's the next thing? And the same thing when times we're getting past something. I remember one of my clients saying, right at the end of the pandemic, he said, boy, when this is over, it'll be an all clear sign, won't it? And I'm thinking, no, there's always the next thing. But it almost takes courage, I would say, to get past the fear, the FOMO, because you have to be true to yourself. You have to know what you want to accomplish. And then you have to be willing to say no and be sitting in that room with your friend or someone else or someone on TV or someone on a social media talking about this or that. And there's the next great thing that's going to happen and think, no, my plan's going to get me to where I'm at and I'm going to go meditate for 15 minutes or something.
Exactly. It's really interesting because when we sold our house, like at the kind of top of the pandemic in LA, and that we were living in an RV for a year, and we're hopefully, fingers crossed, selling it. The deal will close. But it's been really weird for me not like be a renter, and watching all the things happening with property and investment. And what it really taught me, and I'd love for you to talk about this too, is how many beliefs that people have about the shoulds around money that we learned from society, from our parents, from just, being a human in the planet with all the different information. And it just be like, oh, like, is this bad to rent? Am I a bad person if I rent? Should I buy property? But that whole thing of like just realizing every day there's so many rules that you're either following or not following, but they're all like constructs that aren't even real 99% of the time.
No, and you wonder where did they come from? That I guess it was Kim's podcast with you I was listening to, and the stories.
Yeah.
And one of the stories I talked about is my dad, who we did some wonderful things together, but when we get on that tennis court, it was like a cage fight sometimes. I mean, that competition was ingrained in me, and at some point I couldn't lose. If I lost, it would seem like the world was going to come to an end. And so I was, as time went on, early in my career, competition was like, it was instilled in me. And I was pretty lucky, actually. It was my first marriage and going through trouble with that and going through some therapy. And of course, I'm worried about the marriage having trouble. And the therapist kept saying, nah, it's your dad. It's your dad. You got to get through that story. And when I finally was able to talk to my dad and work through things with him, a great peace kind of came over me, both in our relationship and that competition just kind of drifted apart. Not that competition is bad. I still enjoy, playing golf with my kids, and once I might even win, not rare, but the thing is, each of us has this story. That's my story. But each of us kind of can look back and what is it that's driving us to have that FOMO or whatever it is, or that fear when we know that the path can be a more of a mellow path. We don't have to buy into this thing that society is throwing out there for us, and probably already always has. In the 50s, it was what is it? Look out for the Joneses or keep up with the Joneses?
Keep up with the Joneses.
I don't know anybody named Jones these days, but it's not new, but it's, feels powerful for all of us for sure.
I think that's a really important thing. And I was going to ask you this too. I was talking to someone today who was like, it's really hard to be a service professional because so many people are like, I can DIY it. I can watch a YouTube video. I can see something on TikTok. I could open up a Vanguard account on my own and do whatever I want to do, right? And I just wonder, and then there's people who are listening who don't have the resources to have a financial manager like someone like you. And so I was just wondering, what do you wherever someone is on the spectrum, right, of their life phase or their wealth accumulation or just paying their bills, how do you know what you should DIY or just learn in a book, and when do you need professional guidance or help, and what are the reliable sources that you believe that people can look into besides mellowyourmoney.com, which you definitely want to go to know more about that.
That's where you want to start, of course.
That's where you want to start, of course.
Well, I think I do want to reflect on one of my clients who has since passed away, but what he always preached to his kids was pay yourself first, whatever that paycheck is, and whether it's service economy or whatever it is. Think about it might be $50, it might be $20, whatever it is you can afford, but put something away first. That habit, I have a client who used to roll quarters with her mom. And that habit got ingrained in her early on. Now, all of us don't have that opportunity. We're maybe older or whatever, but the idea to put something away before the rest of the things that you're going to have to buy happen, that's a habit that I think we all could benefit from. And
I think that's I just want to say, when I was married, I was like, this is the old school, the first time my husband did all the money, and I got divorced, and I literally was like, I don't know what to do. And I realized my dad never taught me how to manage money, and nobody talked about it in my family, really. And that was one of the first things that I learned, and I joke today with the people who helped me with my money, but I'm like, I still think of things in buckets and jars, right? There's the vacation bucket. There's the house maintenance bucket. And that I literally had to start basic like that, but it still helps me kind of orient to the buckets.
Yeah, I love that bucket idea because that's the other place I was going, because I've been asked sometimes, well, what do I do? Do I save for my house? Do I save for my retirement? What is it? And I always say, I'm a blender.
I love
a little bit, a bucket here and a bucket there, and so whatever that money is, put some in whether it's you're renting or own a house, you're going to have to do something with that house, and you don't want to take any risk with that money. Whether it's in a bank or a money market fund, that money should be safe. And then at some point, there's that bucket. Maybe it's the vacation bucket. It's also should be safe because you're spending it. And then there's the investment bucket. And you've got to figure out how much that you want to risk. And, these days you can go into at least a Schwab and a Fidelity. And I think they'll help you no matter how much you have.
Yeah, that's where I started.
And you can buy a diversified fund. And the only thing I would advise people to do is, if they say you can have a mutual fund, is know what's in that fund. Because when things go down, let's say it's your first $500 that you put away, and it's the beginning of last year, and the market goes down 20%, and now it's $400 or whatever it is, and you're thinking, well, that was stupid. I'm not doing that anymore. But if you know what's in the fund, you look down there and you go, well, there's Apple and Microsoft and Procter and Gamble and Johnson & Johnson. That's okay. They'll come back. And so knowledge, a little bit of knowledge, is really helpful. You don't have to trade that fund. You don't have to know everything, but just knowing what you own can really help you.
That's great. And I love that about, because we're all about asking for help. And I think that so many people have money shame, that they're embarrassed to ask for help. I was talking to a client the other day who's a successful corporate lawyer, right? So, and and she was like, one of the reasons why I think I'm afraid to date or be in a relationship is because I don't want anyone to have to look at my money and know what I spend my money on. I feel like I should have had more, but I did. And there was all that story. And so
Right.
I think that's a whole interesting thing too about, if you're valuing someone else for how much money they have or don't have, are you also then judging yourself around that? And how do you deal with that?
It's a funny thing, isn't it, that we get through all through school and we know nothing about money. We know nothing about dating. We know nothing about anything, and then we're embarrassed that we don't know anything about it. And so, what I encourage people to do at least is to know a little bit, but the trouble is people don't know where to go. And so if you start, reading a how-to book or reading, or listening to, God forbid, some of these shows that are getting you excited all the time, that's not helpful. So I do think that starting with the simple savings, starting with owning some simple funds and getting to know what you own, and just knowing that you don't need to know everything, just a little bit. And you need to know yourself. In the end, you want to be comfortable with your own emotions and how much you can risk, and then talk to the people at Schwab or Fidelity. And I don't work for those people. I'm not.
Right? This is not a commercial. But it's good. It's a good general place that's in most towns.
Right.
I love that. Well, I think in your book, you're talking a lot about the fact that you can grow your money, and also not stress out. And this is the other thing, because I was talking to a client about this, so I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this. She was like, I have a goal. Like, how do I have a goal? Like, I know I want to make this much money in my job or in my business, but also I'm supposed to be like unattached and patient and like, trust the trust. And so when someone comes to you and they're like indecisive, right? Or they have these goals and their like happiness or their security is based on the performance in that week or that month or that last 5 years. How do you explain that? Or how do you manage with like, yes, you want to have a goal, but also you don't want to be attached to that goal as like a reflection of your worthiness or your.
Right. And what I try to do, it probably go back to history and show that the people who were patient, whether they were buying at the top or the bottom, if you were patient, this is what you could make over a long period of time. And to kind of get comfortable with, there are going to be times where it falters and you're not making the money. You're not hitting your goal. It's not, there's so many things that you can, if you're going to have many sales calls you're going to make every week, that you can control. The market, you can't control. And the more you try to, or the more you try to take advantage of it, I think I brought out one example. Imagine you bought an Apple computer. You were lucky to be on top of that right away, and you bought it at $2 a share. And it goes to $4 a share, and you're bragging to your friends at the bar, look what I've done. I've doubled my money in this stock, and you decide to sell it. Well, and maybe you bought it back, maybe you didn't. But imagine the money you didn't make because you took that profit too quickly. I mean, the long trend of stocks pays off. And it goes back to that story with LOEs and so I try to show people that those clients you talked about earlier, that some of my clients I've worked for 30 years, some of them have owned their stocks before I even met them. And granted, if you never trimmed Apple, it would be half your portfolio today. So
Right.
I'm saying do nothing with anything. If the stock starts to be 5 or 10% of your portfolio, take a little off the table. But in the end, look at what the long term can do for you, and then you kind of relax and say, well, this is a bad year. Last year was a terrible year for stocks. The wall of worry never stops. And here we are, we're up about 20% for the year. I'm a little bit under that this year. Yeah, I'm sure somebody predicted it. I didn't. I thought, I thought it might bounce a little bit, but we get caught up with, because somebody's always predicting something.
Right.
They're always finding somebody. Oh, look at that guy, and well, how did you do predicting like 5 years ago? And so
You could have never predicted it.
that's that FOMO though, because it's alluring. You're hearing this guy talk, and he predicted the 2008 collapse, but he predicted it in 1994. So, I mean,
What are you gonna
do? Exactly.
I was gonna tell you a funny story about that. So I had these two aunts. They're both deaf, and they never married, and they lived together, and they were a little cuckoo, but they were really into she managed stocks, and they literally did this long game thing, right? And they were very old school. So Betty and Lois got actually like little dividend checks. And they died in their 80s with like millions and millions and millions of dollars. And when my cousin was doing the trust, she was like dying. She was like, I'm getting these checks from like, whatever that became Walgreens, like literally, right? Just right. And they didn't do that much because they were just doing their life and
they had their balanced portfolio, just water.
Exactly. And it was like, they were, and but that's all they did. And they kept every little thing. It was really funny. They're a little bit hoarders, but it's just, that's the interesting thing, is that it's almost like that understanding of like, I just need to keep it simple and steady, right, over time, rather than always trying to go for the big thing. And I think that's what causes people the stress, is that like, I got to do it now. I got to catch up. And that's what creates that feeling that people don't like.
Stress. And we have so many things we could be stressed about. And so that's what I'd like to kind of pass along, is this doesn't have to be a total stress. Of course, jobs come and go, and there's all kinds of things around money that we need to worry about. But your investments, if you just keep plugging away, I mean, your answer life, they could be a chapter. I mean, that is the classic story, and we all can do that,
Yeah, they're crazy. They had jewelry. Remember those frozen like orange juice things, and they were like, and you pop the like little top off, and there was like orange. Do you remember that? Like back in the day?
Sure.
So when my cousin went back to like clean out their house, they were hiding jewelry in those things.
Oh my. That's funny. Well, but it talks about balance. It reminded me of another client of mine who talked about balance.
Yeah.
At least, I don't know if they were surprised when they inherited all their money or not, but I once had a client whose husband passed away, and so we went to talk to the wife of what she inherited. She had no idea, and she was furious. For all these years, she couldn't go buy dresses, or she couldn't buy this, or she couldn't buy that. And so, save your money, invest your money, but have balance,
Have balance. Sometimes you got to YOLO.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I want everyone to go get this book, mellowyourmoney.com. I think for all of you who listen who are a little type A, myself included, this is a really great opportunity for you to do some self-reflection, create some self-awareness, to really understand what's like a story and what's real risk, to sort of figure out what your own plan is and not be distracted by the shoulds of life, and do that in a way that supports your mental health. So I'm so glad that I got to meet you, Mick. You're a great guy.
Thank you, Marni. This is really fun. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So be like Aunt Betty and Aunt Lois. Chill out, and someday someone will open up your orange carton candy things, and you'll have jewels and a lot of money, but don't make sure you're stingy, because that's not fun either. Ladies, mellowyourmoney.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Marni Battista _ and also on Facebook, Marni Battista. And by the way, I just created, speaking of mellow, I just created this 30-day journal process called the Calm Process to help all of you ladies get grounded back to your highest self, so that you can make smart decisions about all things in your life, including money. So if you're interested in that, give us a DM in Facebook or Instagram, the hashtag Calm, and we'll send that out to you. Mick, thank you so much for being here. And ladies, whatever you do, don't ever forget, life check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Battista, and let's talk soon.